Hello, everybody. Today I'm joined by Brian Winkler and Jennings Hammack from Oklahoma City-based branding and packaging design shop Robot House to discuss all the ways in which authenticity matters in every aspect of your brewery's brand experience and the impact of AI on the beer business, both positive and negative. AI is seemingly seeping into all aspects of our lives. Hell, I even used AI to provide me with the questions that I'm going to ask you to today. Just kidding, Brian. Just kidding, Jennings. Thank you. But seriously, I'm excited to chat with Brian and Jennings about how you can stay brand authentic in an AI infatuated world. But before we dive too deep, Brian's and Jennings, outside of the hats you wear with Robot House, tell me something quirky about yourselves.
Oh man,
Let's get personal from the get go. We're going to be authentic. We might as well share our goals.
yeah. I said throw some curveballs. So yeah, I'm kind of like, what isn't quirky about me? Because that's sort of my personal brand. But I still read and love comic books at the age of 53. 40 something years into my love affair with them. I've written some comics. I pitched a animated series to Cartoon Network 10 years ago. So I don't know if that's quirky, but just the that sort of ties in, I think, to what we do, since we kind of have a quirky vibe here. I'm still kind of like a 5-year-old, watching Sesame Street and coloring books, and so, anything that's sort of creative and fun and that's what, that's kind of how I, live my everyday.
Did you do a pilot episode for that show you pitched?
We did. An animation studio did like a 3-4 minute sequence for it. So we actually saw our stuff kind of come to life, and it was pretty amazing. They didn't buy it, but it was just like, we never thought we'd get there. So it was kind of, it was just a cherry on top of the whole experience.
That's an awesome experience. And if you haven't and are able to share it someday, I would die to see that.
I'll hook you up.
Good deal. Jennings, you've had plenty of time to think. Something quirky about yourself.
Yeah, I wish I had a better answer. But part of this is, with Brian and his comic book world, everybody else in the studio kind of has that very same attitude or passions and style. We're really creative nerds. And my quirk is that I am kind of the opposite, where I'm the one sports guy in the office. I like some fantasy football. I like to go play golf. I keep the rest of the team up to date on how the Sooners are doing, Boomer Sooner, even though.
But does the team even care?
No, but I like to tell it because this is my story, my passions. So that's probably what kind of separates me a little bit from the rest of the team outside of work hours.
Yeah. With your passions combined, you are Robot House.
Yeah, it's kind of like the Munsters, I think, had like a totally normal niece or cousin or something, and everybody else were Frankenstein weirdos, and so we're all the Frankenstein weirdos, and Jennings is
I'm the niece,
the normie, the cute niece that comes shows up looking all normal.
I love it. So let's dive in. Brian, let's start with when we talk brand authenticity, what do we mean by that?
So yeah, that's as we kind of look into what we do, we really think about kind of our aesthetic is authenticity, and it's because for us, brand and authenticity is something that's real, that's human, something that's got a soul. That's a really big part of our brand development. Working with clients is really revealing the soul and the vision behind their brand. Something that's really thoughtfully created, and relationship based is a big part of it, for us, and because it's about being human. It's about kind of connecting emotionally, and people feel it, and people kind of know when it exists and when it doesn't, and then sometimes it's even something where it might not be very immediate or obvious, but just kind of a couple of examples. I was thinking of one of what I think of as authenticity, and one absolutely not. And kind of have to use to be relevant to everybody, you have to use, national brands. And so I was thinking like Liquid Death. I love Liquid Death canned water. Just aesthetically, creatively, I think it's super fun and cool. And they kind of hide the idea that their brand ethos is we want fewer single-use plastic bottles in the world. And so the solution is, canned water. And so the solution is metal. And so they go about it by creating this super metal brand. And so just like when that first clicked with me, I was like, oh, that's really good, but it's very authentic to who they are, what their vision and values are, but it's also, they're hitting you over the head with a lot of stuff, but not necessarily like pro-environment message, because that's not sexy, but thirst murdering, cans of water is sexy, so that's, for me, that's I think a really authentic, answer in terms of like kind of a bigger brand and getting bigger every day. For something inauthentic, and there's surely tons of examples of that, but I think there's a billboard in Oklahoma City that I've seen for years. It's a Geico insurance billboard, and it says, "We're local." And I'm like, "Are you?" It's like, we've got a local office. Great. McDonald's is local because there's a McDonald's right there, so like anything's local if there's somebody working for it here, but they're just trying to piggyback onto this whole idea of local being this big thing over the last 10, 15 years, probably everywhere. And especially I think, the craft brewing industry. But it's just like, come on, you're Geico, you've got $7 billion in advertising. You're not a mom and pop.
So Brian, for you, like you personally, and for Robot House, when did the concept of brand authenticity become so important to you? Was it something you always tried to incorporate when you worked with the company, or when did you really want to go all in on the storytelling relationship side of things?
Oh, I think that's from the get-go, because I've been before starting Robot House 20 years ago in my living room. So that's a very authentic small business, start. I worked at a couple of big agencies.
It's so local, Brian.
Yeah. Super. So I was on the other side of it, working for big ad agencies and never feeling like just the process, the machine of that, and even working on some big national brands here and there. It was pretty soulless. And when I started Robot House and really focused on small businesses, mostly local, but we've been able to grow our footprint, with technology and relationships. Small businesses have soul. When you're working directly with somebody who started a business and you're creating that relationship and you're building it together. That's our big thing, is whenever we finalize, present a brand, the clients see and hear themselves in it because we've learned about them, we've grown a relationship. So we're not just sort of like plugging and playing and this could work for anybody. This was specifically created and this story was specifically written for that brand, for that person, for that business, for that vision. And so it's just kind of really part of our DNA.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. So Jennings, why is this concept so specifically relevant to the craft beer industry?
Yeah, of course. I think the definition of craft is basically authentic. Craft beer is such an art and it's such an involved process with just, human hands picking, very specific ingredients and tying it all together to make a very specific beer. That is just, the brewers or the rest of the team's child, it's like it's their artwork. So I think just, by definition, craft beer is authentic. It's kind of where, science kind of meets art with like a little bit of splash of magic. And just, all in all, it's a creative endeavor. So I think, it's when you talk about authenticity, that is what craft beer is at kind of every single level.
And I would agree with you. In the current state of craft beer, I mean, everybody wants an experience, and so much of that experience comes down to storytelling and just having that authentic time, authentic connection. We all want meaning. We all want to have that when we go to a brewery.
And that's why we love working with breweries so much, is that whenever you sit down at a craft brewery, you are often talking to the founder or the head brewer or somebody who was there at the very beginning of the process, and you get to hear their story. How did the brewery get started? And they're more than happy to tell you. And it's always every story is very different, and they all have a lot of fun twists and turns, but you're getting that from the source. You're not getting it from somewhere else. If you're talking to your Geico rep, how did Geico get started? They're not going to know that.
Yeah, it's something. Just the idea that craft beer, it's a product, but it's not a soulless product. It's something that's created, something that it's the ideal is for it to really be the best it can be. And it kind of reminded me when there was a movie that came out earlier this year called Blackberry. That's the kind of origin of like the rise and fall of the Blackberry before the iPhone, and it's really funny. It's mostly a comedy, but mostly true to life. But in an early part, the main guy behind BlackBerry, kind of the nerdy tech guy, and he's got a big problem with when he sees made in China, with all this made in China stuff, and it's all really defective and low quality. And he's really striving for perfection, which I think is probably something that a lot of our friends in the craft beer industry, that's the ideal. And this sort of investor who comes in and partners with them, says something about, perfect is the enemy of good. And he says, well, good enough is the enemy of humanity. And so I really like that, because it's sort of nobody gets into business to be good enough. It's really about striving for perfection and not settling, and not sending stuff to not that can't send stuff to China, but in this instance, but just the idea of it really being this striving for a thing that nobody else is doing, and making it as best you can to really be something substantial and excellent.
I really like that quote, Brian, because in this industry, I often see people almost get satisfied with being satisfactory. And if you're looking to be, successful in the future, you always have to be looking ahead.
Yeah.
Now I'm gonna have to go watch that movie now. Is it on Netflix?
Not yet. It actually, I think my 20-year-old is fans of the guys who made it, and so we saw it. It played here for a week, and it's on Blu-ray now. I love physical media, so we still do Blu-rays, but I think AMC or somebody is going to be streaming it as a mini series or something. So they're adding extra stuff to it. So I think it should be showing up sometime soon, I think.
I'll put it on my radar. So, you could have chosen, both of you, to work with brands like Geico and gone into that soulless line of work that you really would enjoy. But instead, you've paired with breweries to help them tell their story. I'd love to hear a couple that you've worked with, and, why they've been impactful to you and the brewery, of course.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think I can talk about Skydance, and One Well gave us the thumbs up, and Jennings, if you want to chat a little bit about One Well, but
of course.
We presented in Milwaukee. CBP presents Milwaukee and connects Milwaukee as well as Norfolk last year. The Skydance Brewing case study, and their local Oklahoma brewery. They're just a few blocks from us. It's an easy walk, or a less easy walk if we go down there and have a few beers. But Jake Keys, the founder, is Native American. In fact, he was just elected, in the Iowa tribe where that he's part of, and so he's in DC a lot, doing stuff for the community and for the tribe. And Skydance, so they had really great PR as a native owned brewery, but it really wasn't showing in the brand, in the packaging, in what they were doing. It was fine, it was good, but it just kind of looked like something anybody could have done, really. And so he came to us, and so we worked with them and built a brand story, really pulling out the native story. And so this is native is the brand theme for Skydance now. And so we built a brand story about native entrepreneurship and really, his vision of inspiring the next generation of native leaders, and designed all new cans for his core lineup of 3 beers, with really fun illustrations and really diving into the kind of native details in a modern way, and created something that didn't exist before. His previous cans, they were solid, but unexceptional. And the cool thing is, he was really he shed a couple of tears when we presented it, because we did really well. He was a great partner in crafting the story. But then when they launched the new cans, retail sales have doubled.
Wow. I was getting ready to ask you the benefits they saw.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, and that's, we can't ever guarantee anything like that, obviously, but that's why you do it, is for that kind of success. So to have that personal success, and then for it to really resonate, with consumers, with fans, and he's got a big fan base here. That was great. And it was all because we were able to pull that authenticity out of something that it was in there. It just was hidden. It hadn't really been explored yet. And we were able to really work with him and really just get all of the vision from him, and then just turn that into a message. So that's, we just translate. We don't fully create. We partner and we create together, and then we articulate it, in ways that are meaningful.
That's really impactful. And Jennings, you've got another story to tell, but briefly before we dive into that, you met the folks you're getting ready to talk about at One Well at CBP Connect. So you met them at a place where you're already looking to build relationships.
Yeah, of course. We met them over the summer in Milwaukee and really hit it off with them. And Chris introduced himself to us by juggling better than I could and during our presentation. So we knew right away, okay, kind of like this guy. And actually, last week we were with them in Kalamazoo, Michigan, for the first time, in person, and got to spend kind of a day and a half with them at their kind of brew pub. Their brew pub is incredible. It's awesome. They've kind of bought this strip mall and kind of slowly taken over each kind of shop in the strip mall, but they have fantastic beer, really good food, and then they have an entire kind of pinball arcade with 50 pinball machines, dartboards, foosball.
How did you get any work done?
That's work. That's work. I'm trying to understand.
Yeah.
But no, seriously, very thankful for them, Chris and Andrew, for letting us come and hang out with them. But so this is one that we're in the middle of. So I can't really speak to the end goal, but I can kind of tell you where we are now with them. They've been around for 9 years ish, and their style so far has been really cartoonish, and it's worked up until this point. But as they continue to grow, it just doesn't lend itself well to kind of scaling it up. It's almost a little too Saturday morning cartoonish. And, as they kind of grow into distro, they want to be able to compete with, other craft brands on the shelves and even inside their tap room. They really want their story to kind of be told, and it's just kind of missing the mark with what the cartoons are now. So part of us meeting them in person was just kind of, get to know them, understand, what their motto is. And I think their motto pretty much is just high fives over handshakes, which just says so much about how awesome these guys are. Everything with them is just fun, friendly awesomeness. And that story isn't being told with what they're currently doing. So we just kind of took that from them, and now we'll, turn that into what, their brand vision is going to be moving forward. But they make it super easy because they are just awesome dudes who want to have a really good time, but start to be able to to grow on what they already have.
We kind of joked about it a moment ago, saying like playing pinball is part of your work. But in all reality, you understanding their brand, spending time with them, it helps you better tell their story. So it is an extremely important part of the process.
Yeah. And I think, Chris, kicking my ass in foosball, and Andrew kicking my ass in darts really, helped me understand, who these guys are. But I think we'll come up with something great, because at the end of the day, it's their story that we're telling. They're giving us all the puzzle pieces, and we're just putting it together.
Yeah. But did you bring your juggling balls to show them who's boss?
I had to leave a little bit of a cliffhanger. So maybe next time we meet, I'll bring him with me. I knew I was in trouble in darts because Andrew, when we walked up to the dartboard, was like, "I'll be right back. I need to go to my desk and get my darts." And you don't like to hear that. And so out came his, professional grade custom darts, and I didn't stand a chance. But still part of the process. It's all part of the process.
Yeah, and I think just in terms of kind of building that awesomely authentic or authentically awesome, brand, kind of brand refresh with them. A big part of it was, that we needed to experience it. And, we're a few hundred miles away, and a trip through Denver, which is sort of counterintuitive, geographically, but you gotta hub where you gotta hub. So we were able to meet in Milwaukee, which was just still I'm still buzzing from that week up there. It was so much fun and so great, and some great people. And so for us to start the conversation there, and then shift it, to Zooms and emails, and really grow that connection. But yeah, then us going up there and hanging out and eating and drinking and playing. So we really know what, their feel, their vibe, what they love about the brand, what their customers love about the brand. So that, is going to be integral in us really articulating that for them, since we've felt it ourselves as, essentially as customers. So yeah, that's where we're still not, kind of residual Milwaukee buzz, but we still got a lot of KZoo buzz. That's the, the locals call it KZoo. So we feel like we're honorary locals now.
That's why we call it KZoo. Yeah.
Well, it's super cool to hear the impact of the Skydance branding, what's done for the brand. And I can't wait to see what comes of the One Whale project, because they're great guys. You're great guys. I'm really excited to see where this goes. But our industry, it's not just about the breweries. And me personally, I'm lucky enough to interact with people like you, all the wonderful industry partners out there that have some sort of value to provide to our industry. So how do you see authenticity as relevant to the partners and the vendors that come in the craft beer industry?
Yeah, of course. So Robot House as well is a partner of the industry, and so we are never, we love craft beer. We don't only work with craft breweries, but whenever we are in an environment like this, like CBP, it's all about how we tell our story to craft breweries, honestly. And, so we kind of even shape a lot of our marketing material. When you join us at CBP Charleston, you'll be able to see, kind of what our new branding looks like. But even, kind of behind us, we bring a banner that is a Robot House designed beer can, or Robot House branded beer can. So it's, kind of aligning our materials with craft brewers, just to highlight that, we understand the business. We do this, all day long. And what we show to craft brewers is different than what we show to a law firm or like an insurance agency if we were approaching Geico. I don't know why all this is about Geico, but I'm tying it all back in. But yeah, so I mean, especially, we see a ton of vendors in the space that if you go to the website, yeah, it might have the word craft beer on there, but if you took that off, it could be just a blanket website for anything. It doesn't speak craft beer, so to speak. And so I think it's insanely important whenever, if you're a partner, to kind of shape your branding, shape your messaging to the industry that you're in, just to try to relate to them a little bit more, because that's the authentic human connection right there, is just being able to talk to them. Oh yeah, I understand your industry. Here's me showcasing that, versus here's my, templated website that just happens to have, a beer on it, or just to say that, you do something beer related.
Yeah, I think it's so important that, those in our industry speak craft beer, because I say it a lot, but it's so simple. People want to work with people they want to have a beer with. It really comes down to that. If I like having a beer with you, that's the first start in a relationship. And I'm going to be better at helping you tell your story, whether you're selling beer or you're selling grains or you're selling a POS system or insurance to craft breweries. You have to care about the industry as a whole, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And something there's some really great shops out there that do specialize in craft beer, and that's all they do. And they do wonderful work. And we're fans of a lot of them. For us, being more of a generalist agency, creative agency, it's a case where we don't specialize, but we kind of have a specialty in it, just from everything that we've been able to do over the last 10 plus years in the space. So whenever we have the opportunity to work with a craft brewery, it kind of is a more special experience for us, because we can make, we've got clients all over the spectrum, including insurance, not GEICO, but some other insurance and healthcare and legal and all kinds of stuff, and we do great brands with them. But it's just when something you can eat and drink and experience, and that's why every opportunity we get, we really go all out for brewers, because it's just fun. It's like, if we're not having fun, then why are we doing this? And I think that's kind of the ethos probably of every craft brewer out there. They're doing it because it's fun, it's a passion, and they wouldn't want to do anything else.
You nailed it, Brian. I've got nothing to add to that one. I 100% agree with you on that. So the time has finally gotten here. We've kind of went the whole time without talking about half of the title. What do we think of craft beer businesses using AI? And I'd love to hear about if there are any acceptable applications. Hit me with your knowledge.
So maybe I'll start with the pros, because I know Brian is going to have plenty on the cons. But some of the breweries that we work with, and even kind of some brewery partners that we're familiar with, they use AI for sales and distro, and just kind of buying patterns, and just real analytical data that no one really wants to trudge through all the time, which I think that is a great application for it. I think that's exactly what it should be. I mean, it's almost like even saying Microsoft Excel is AI, because you're putting in the formulas and it's just computing it out for you. So on the surface level, I think that is fantastic that it's being used as a tool, which leverage it as a tool, especially in that case. But then, I think Brian might have a little bit of a different opinion the deeper we get into it, but yeah.
Sure. And yeah, I think that, any usage of AI, sort of ethical usage, for sales, for really kind of being able to get kind of granular information, to work the spreadsheets and the non-creative stuff, the business stuff, the number crunching, all of that. Like, I don't like crunching numbers. Let's let the machines crunch the numbers, we don't have to always fully agree at Robot House. It keeps some nice individuality, and I'm might have mentioned earlier, I'm 53, Jennings is 28, so we're whole generation plus. We have multiple generations within Robot House, which to our benefit, I think. But for me, when it comes to creative, my issue with and AI is like, it's the hot new thing, and it's the hot new thing, and everybody wants to talk about it, everybody wants to play with it, but when it comes to branding, when it comes to design, when it comes to authenticity, I mean, AI is artificial. It's in the name, and I feel like the perfect antonym of authenticity or authentic is artificial, right? So it's not something you can have a relationship with. It's a thing. It's not a human, living, breathing, beating heart, thinking brain. It's just a thing. And so, and then just AI art, I always say with quotes, it's getting better, but at the end of the day, it's still a soulless product, and and even as it improves currently, and at some point, I'm sure it won't have the issues it's got now. Right now, everything kind of has this sort of like dollar store Pixar, sort of muddy 3D rendered, just kind of soullessness, this uncanny valley.
Dollar store Pixar is such a good term.
I was thinking about it, like Little Mermaid movie comes out, and then suddenly there's these like Dollar Tree DVDs of like Little Mermaid, that was animated in Eastern Bloc country or something. So just kind of reminded me of that. It's just that's it at its best right now. So for us, it's just we kind of, I'm not gonna say dodged a bullet, but I'm not gonna mention the brewery. But there was a brewery that we did talk with last year, and we were feeling really good vibes. And Robot House is named after a reference from the TV show Futurama, and they actually had a beer that was inspired by a Futurama character. And actually, side note, One Well has a beer named after a Futurama character, a super obscure one. So that was like, okay, this is a good sign.
We can be friends.
So, yeah. Barbados Slim, who's a limbo. I think he majored in limbo and sex in college or something like that. I tangent. But so this brewery, we wound up not working with them, even though there was this sort of like sign from God. It wasn't a sign from God. But I checked in on them a few months ago, and they had found they didn't have the same sort of trust in non-locals that One Well has, luckily. So they're working with somebody that's closer to where they're at, and that agency is using AI for their packaging for the new beer can designs, and they have a beer that's designed after this character. And I'm sure they just punched in whatever their prompts were, but part of it was design this like this character. And so it's sort of this three-dimensional nightmare version of this beloved cartoon character on there, and I'm honestly, I'm emotionally attached to the character and to the, but just like I saw it, and like the design is super solid in terms of typography, color, all these things. It's a legitimate agency for sure did this, but then they do say on the can, using I think Mid-Journey AI, I think is what they used. But I mean, they they put in this prompt, create something that looks like this character, and whatever AI they used is the one that scrapes the entire internet, copyright and all, and is able to create this monstrous dollar store Pixar version, and so for me, it's not only aesthetically unpleasing, but then just because we are creators, and and being a guy who's played around in comics and some animation and everything, it's like, just because it's on the internet doesn't mean it's free. And so just that, again, sort of like the authenticity of, using something because it's there, because you can, doesn't mean you should. And what does it say about you and what your brand and your product, if part of it is, essentially, it's not quite like brewing with stolen, ingredients, but, it's, I'm emotionally, this stuff, like I try and put a positive spin on, on the good stuff, but, I see stuff like that and I'm just like, oh.
So Brian, I was a little embarrassed earlier and I didn't want to bring it up, and it also hit really close to home. Geico's actually reached out to me to create a logo for them to put them into the beer space, and I would just love your thoughts on it, if you don't mind, really quickly.
It's great. Put it on a can.
No.
You think it looks good?
Yeah, that's fantastic.
But that's such a great example. It's such a great example.
Nailed it first try. But Jennings, like, what are some ethical examples of AI?
Yeah, I think at the stage of AI, it's really hard to use ethical in there. But there's a ton of AI generators out there that are just scraping the entire internet, and they're taking just artwork from artists that have just been caught up in the algorithm. So they're not getting credit for any of that. So it's kind of like that fun high school term plagiarism. That's basically exactly what it is. But if you do go the AI route, I would just recommend using something that is pulling from like a closed loop database. So Adobe does a really good job where they're basically using Adobe stock to generate all these images. So it's just a closed network. Even Shutterstock is doing the same thing where they're just pulling from Shutterstock images. So it's all verified through artists, and it's all held in their own, libraries. So you're not really stealing from anyone without their, permission or knowledge. And because it's all part of, an already owned database.
Now, Brian, what are some of the environmental issues with AI?
That's a big thing as well. Just for me, as the keeper of our plastic and aluminum and metal and cardboard recycling in our kitchenette over there. I think that there's still a lot of talk about that. So I'm not going to say I'm an expert at all in any of this stuff, but I try to, when I see something, I try to find, good information from vetted, sources. And so there have been some initial studies about the environmental impact. Not only, I was first hearing about it in terms of like crypto and then NFTs, and now AI, sort of like the kind of the latest, digital thing that people are obsessed about, and just the amount of power and energy, electricity that it takes, water, that it takes. And especially with, in craft brewing, water being a big part of the process, that it's, I think anybody who, wants to kind of explore the space, I think should feel a little bit obligated if they, do believe in sustainability and, allocation of resources, then what does that their usage, what are the kind of butterfly effects of these, of these things, and it's sort of like, there's no such thing as a free lunch, and AI is free. And we absolutely understand the economics of craft brewing, and and especially if you're doing one-off releases, things like that, and there's very little margin in the first place. And so something that is here's a free thing you can use to, to have a unique can design, it's like, we absolutely understand the appeal of that, But then it's really kind of looking into what are the effects of it, not only from that kind of like authenticity perspective, but just environmentally and everything, you kind of, you pay a price for everything. And so I think there should be more conversations about what prices are being paid with these new technologies, for sure.
Good thoughts there, Brian. No, we have a question. Well, the question comes from Scott Colby with Market Your Craft, who will also be at CBP Connects Charleston presenting. He's going to be giving a talk on, maximizing your events, which I can't wait for. Waking up your events, I believe is the exact term. And Brian, you and Jennings are giving a talk, but Scott asked, what about using AI to create efficiencies for marketing? For example, using a robot house generated point of sale template as a base and having Adobe Express generate 20 retailer specific versions. What are your thoughts on that?
So I don't know if my opinion is going to be the same as Brian, but I think that's perfectly okay. That's a great application for it, as long as you're using your own marketing materials that you've handcrafted. If it's pulling from your own work, I think that's totally okay. I think you just start to blur the lines once it starts pulling from elsewhere. I mean, there's not much difference in that versus, if you're hopping on Canva and using a Canva template and just swapping out your logos and colors. It's just kind of streamlining that process to fit your marketing materials. But I think, again, just at the end of the day, as long as it's pulling from your own internal brand.
Yeah, and I think environmental issues aside, just in terms of usage, I think anything that helps efficiency, because like if it's a matter of like you've got a thing and you need 20 of them, then that's essentially sort of like the designer's version of number crunching. It's and sometimes something like that is kind of okay, because if you spend most of your day thinking up new stuff, sometimes it's sort of like folding laundry. Like if you have a task that doesn't require any thought, but just you need to kind of do some stuff, it can be sort of a little Zen task, But if you have tools that can simplify that task, when I've had conversations recently about AI, kind of one of my big things as a creative is like, if we're going to use AI, let's use AI to do the stuff that sucks. Let's use AI to do the stuff that we don't want to do, but then the stuff that is fun, like designing and illustrating and writing and, like creative stuff that you use your brain and your heart and your soul to various, percentages, depending on what it is, why have AI do the fun stuff? Let's keep the fun stuff fun. Let's still value expertise in the fun stuff, and then let the AI do the grunt work that we don't want to do. That's going to be a lot quicker and easier. And if that's going to help us, gain time to keep the fun stuff coming. So yeah, I agree with our cute niece, the cute niece of Robot House, that that I think I think anything that a tool to help efficiency, thumbs up.
Cool. Well, Jennings, I've got one more question for you. What do you see as ethically acceptable uses of AI?
Yeah, and so I do have to argue the counterpoints of being anti-AI. I'm smart enough to know AI is not going anywhere, and that it will only get better, and that the dollar store Pixar or Disney is only going to, it'll have the appropriate number of fingers and the appropriate number of teeth eventually. But I think at the end of the day, it's a tool, it's a resource. Use it, for a creative springboard. Type in prompts, if you have a beer coming out and you want a label and you don't really have a clear idea of where to go, type in, what you want it to look like, and have it give you a few different ideas that you can kind of work with. And, at that point, you're doing research. You're not using it as your final design. And, just kind of take various ideas from that, or styles or concepts, and work that into your own label. And kind of the second part of that, and Brian even touched on this earlier, is that we understand that label artwork can get expensive, especially if you're doing several weekly releases. But what you don't want to do is have a really awesome brand and then quickly turn out some AI generated content for your weekly release, because for a lot of these people coming in the tap room, that might be the first time they've engaged with your brand is on that one weekly release, and you're going to lose them. Your story's not going to be told just because you have an AI label. But there, our advice is, have it help you set up a simple template so that you can just update once a week, and that you're not having to invest in, a recurring weekly fee to get a new label design out. Just have it help you kind of structure what that label looks like. Because, I think at the end of the day, like, craft beer is such an art. It's such a long process from start to finish of, here's kind of the beer I want to make. Okay, what ingredients, hops are so specific and particular, and every brewer wants to handcraft this beer, and so 98% of it is such like laborious, tedious love work. Why would you fast forward that last 2% by just hitting enter on a computer just to spit out a label, whenever your brand and your story is all told in that first 98% of that process?
No, absolutely. You two have dropped so much wisdom and insight in the creative process today. I love how we've gone from the brand authenticity to discussing the AI component of the world we live in. So I'd kind of love to bring it all together, like a Zen-like moment. I want to hear from both of you, like, what are your final thoughts? What are the takeaways we should have from your conversation?
So for me, Gen Xer, who's seeing all these whippersnappers, with their TikToks, bringing all this confusing new stuff, into the office. For me, it's basically a little bit what Jennings was saying in terms of, it was something Brett and Adam, my partners in Robot House, and they do the majority of the packaging design here. They went to the Bob conference in Chicago, and I forgot who they were talking to. I think it might have been somebody from Stout Collective that put on the Bob conference, beer design conference. They've been a couple of years now, really great, in September, I think. And in just talking about, even weekly releases, things like that everything that you do, every touch point that you have could be the first experience that a customer has with your brand. And I think that's something, and that goes even beyond packaging. That's obviously, the packaging on shelves and in retail, but then, tap room, like everything, any customer could be that first customer, and what impression do you want to make, with them? And so, I think that's probably top of mind a lot. But I think that is a big part of design, a big part of storytelling, a big part of crafting authentic messaging, so that somebody can see something, feel something, experience something, and it ties into the vision and values and soul of the brand, And so I think, it's really, how important is it for you for that first customer, the first time, to feel your vision and to really experience it in what they see and what they taste and what they feel, that is, that you have thought through and provided to them.
It's so generic, but true. I mean, you really only do have one chance to make a first impression. You got to come out strong.
Absolutely.
Jennings, how about you? Final thought.
Yeah. I think echoing just kind of what I said about a minute ago is, I think the question that you have to ask yourself as a craft brewer is, if you could press a button on a computer and it makes a beer, like, would you? If that was your beer, there's no passion. I think everyone would love to streamline the beer making process, but I think, specifically, would you hit a button to make a beer knowing that it's pulling from, some other brewery's ideas, and then now you're slapping just kind of a soulless label on it? Is that really craft beer? Is that authentic? Does that really tell your brand story? And, I think at the end of the day, the answer is hopefully no.
No, I agree with you on that. I mean, I love this conversation because it just dives deep into where we are in the world of beer. Just being authentic. It's so important, whether you're an industry partner, whether you're a brewery. That's what everybody's looking for. The customers are craving that authentic experience when they come into your taproom or see your brand on your shelves. So Brian and Jennings, if anyone is interested in connecting with you one-on-one or learning more about Robot House, how can they do so?
Yeah, they could come see us at CBP Connects in Charleston. This is probably the best chance to see us face to face.
So Jennings, I want to make you do it one more time. What's the title of your session there?
It's going to be a mouthful here, but Mighty Malty Marvels, assembling your brewery's brand superhero universe. And I think the running title, just moving forward, is going to be Mighty Malty Marvels.
That's still tough to say, but I love it. Brian, your turn.
Triple M.
Triple M. There we go.
We love alliterations. We love some alliterations.
We do love alliterations, as do the fellas at One Well. So that's been and that's even kind of alliterative, even though it's an O and a W. So yeah, we are going to be in Charleston with bells on. We can't wait to see friends that we've made over the last 3 connects and meet a whole bunch of new ones. And we are otherwise online at robot.house, not a .com, it's a robot.house, which confuses some email clients, but we just deal with that when we can. As well as, I think, Robot House OKC on Instagram and the main socials. And so that's where you'll see more of our newer work is on our Instagram, and then a pretty solid portfolio of a good amount of our packaging work at robot.house.
Well, Brian and Jennings, I always love learning from you. I love picking your brains, and I can't wait to share pints in just a few weeks. It's going to be here before we know it, this December 4, 5, and 6 in Charleston, South Carolina for CBP Connects. I appreciate you both, and I'll see you really soon. Thanks again for this great conversation today.
Thanks, Andrew.
Thank you, Andrew.
Bye, everybody.